We're going to skip ahead to chapters 5 and 6 in the book. My dear friend Ryan May is our guest speaker, and he's going to talk about dealing with conflict in marriage. Now, as we'll see in the story, Solomon and his bride have a fight, and we can learn something profound from the way they treat each other during their fight. So if you could, let's give a big pathway welcome to Ryan May.
Good morning, everybody. It's great to be here this morning. Worship was so fantastic this morning. I almost say, hey, that's church, let's go. But Ryan, if you're watching on Facebook, we're going to continue to go, all right? Well, it's my pleasure to be here with you this morning. And as Ryan laid out for you, we are in this love story series where first we talked about the seasons for marriage and how sometimes we get these things a little bit out of order, right? And we led into the fact that he's going to talk about, the next, when we get things in the right order, we wait and then have sex, right? And that's the honeymoon. And Kendall, my daughter's now awkward that I'm talking about sex from stage, but that's why he pushed it off till next week. So it's better to wait. And if it's better to wait, it's probably better to wait to hear about it until next week, right? So Ryan did spare me from giving the sex talk, right? I've already done it with my kids. That's enough. I remember Cam and I sat down where we lost Troncus, and I was like, well, this is a taco, and this is a burrito, but so that's about all I want to, that's about all we're going to go there. So we're going to skip over the honeymoon and the hot and heavy stuff. We can wait for that until next week. But that leads to the first fight and how that first fight was resolved. So I don't have to talk about sex, but I do have to talk about how we handle conflict in marriage. And conflict is a part of every marriage. It's a part of every relationship. And I hope today that the take-home message that you take home with you is the phrase, choices lead, feelings follow. Choices lead, feelings follow. When we look at the Song of Solomon, we learn that this couple, Solomon and his bride, made three very important choices about how they were going to handle conflict in their relationship. And what we found is that their behavior followed their choices. Their behavior did not follow their emotions. My wife Danae and I have been married for 21 years. Right? We started dating when I was a freshman in college 25 years ago. She was a sophomore in college. Older woman, younger man. Cradle robber. She came after me. That's a story for another time, right? So, but it happened. It's a true story. She chased me down, right? And in those 21 years, we've had a few disagreements. We've had a few times where we have had conflict in our marriage. As a psychologist, I've talked to many couples that have had conflict in their marriage. As a human being, I've talked to many friends that have had conflict in their marriage. There is not a single relationship that exists that has never had conflict. If someone tells you that they've never had conflict in their relationship, one of two things happen. The relationship just started within the past 5 seconds, or they're lying. All right? I think back to some of the doozies that Danae and I have had. And there's one that stands out in my mind. And it is a model of how not to handle conflict. Right? Now, Danae and I are both very strong-willed people. I mean, you know us, you say, well, obviously Danae is, but that surprises us about you, Ryan. All right? Okay, we're going to have conflict when we get home now, all right? But we're both very strong-willed people, and two strong-willed people in a relationship can lead to some conflict, right? And she's saddled with the extra fact that she's married to someone who's always right, all right? All right? But I can remember the fight. And actually, Danae and I were talking about this disagreement here just in a few days because I had to ask her permission to share this with you this morning. And neither one of us could remember what the fight was actually about, but we could remember what happened during the fight. You see, Danae and her father have a very good relationship today. Her dad, Jim, is a fantastic man, and Jim, if you're watching online, you are a fantastic guy. But growing up, that there was some butting of heads between Danae and her father. They have very similar personalities. And Danae shared with me very early on in our relationship that she struggled with her relationship with her dad when she was growing up because she felt like she could never please him. That nothing she could ever do was good enough for him. As hard as she would try to please him, her room could never be clean enough. Her grades could never be good enough. Now, this is what she felt. I wasn't there, but this is what she felt. So I knew this was there. So early on in our marriage, we were in a disagreement about something. Chances are it was me leaving my shoes out, which I have a problem with, or leaving my clothes laid out, which I have a problem with. Now, when I say laid out, I mean like scattered all over the room, all right? So that's probably what it was about, but neither one of us remembered. And we were in the middle of disagreeing about this. And I was angry. I was mad. And I lost sight of the fact that we were discussing an issue. And my goal was to win this argument. So I went in with a low blow. I said, "You are just like your dad, and I know exactly how you felt growing up. I could never be good enough for you." The look in her eyes, I know I hit a low blow there. It shut her down. I learned that day to never bring that up again in an argument. Because I lost sight of the fact, what happened there is that my behavior came from my feelings. It came from my emotions. I reacted in a very ungodly way towards her. Now, I think that was the last time I've ever brought that up in a disagreement or an argument. Because hopefully I've learned from that. And I'm sure I'm not alone in this. Any of you that are in relationships, you know the buttons that you can push. You know the things that you can say to your spouse, to the person that you're in a relationship with, that you know will hurt them. I know I'm not the only one that has reacted out of anger and not out of a way to solve the problem. So hopefully you and I together can look at the scripture that is put forth in the Song of Solomon. We look at this story as they are in their first disagreement. And we can learn some lessons about how we can make choices about how we're going to behave and let our choices lead and our feelings follow. Let's take a look at the scripture. Let's turn to Song of Solomon, and it's going to be on the screen here. And if you're following along in your app, it's there in the app as well. So let's take a look. We're going to look at Song of Solomon, chapter 5, verses 2 through 6. And before we get into the scripture, let me lay some ground rules. This is for you, not for the person that you're in a relationship with. All right? So no elbowing the person next to you and say, "I told you I was right." I told you I was dealing with this correctly and you were the one that was wrong. All right? That's ground rule number one. It's not about you. You can't say, "Oh, I'm glad this is recorded because I can play it for you on the app later." All right? Or to make it a little personal, "Weren't you listening to my sermon this morning? That's not what you were supposed to do." Right? Ground rule number 2, it's about now and the future. This is not meant to dig up past wounds and to get angry at things that have happened in the past. Make decisions that what we're going to learn today applies to us now and in the future. Ground rule number 3, normal people can't do this. Like, okay, great, Ryan. You're giving us something today we're not able to do. Normal people can't do this, but with the love of God in your heart, you're not normal. You can only do this with the love of God in your heart. So those are our 3 ground rules. Let's take a look at the scripture. All right, if you can flick to the slide here with the scripture. All right. So Song of Solomon 5, chapter 5, verse 2 through 6. And this is Solomon's bride talking. "I slept, but my heart was awake." She's in bed. She's by herself. "Listen, my beloved is knocking." All right, so Solomon comes home. He's knocking on the door. He says, "Open to me, my sister, my darling, my dove, my flawless one." All right? Sounds like me when I came home from my game last night, "Hello, my darling, my dove, my flawless one." All right? "My head is drenched with dew, my hair with the dampness of night." So he's coming home late at night. Who knows where he's coming from? He's knocking at the door. The door is locked. He said, "My head is drenched with dew," right, with the damp of the night. And she responds, "Oh, I've already taken off my robe. I'm already ready for bed. Must I put it off again? I've washed my feet. Must I soil them again?" Right? So they must not have a Roomba at home that cleans up their bedroom floor, right? She's like, "Am I going to get dirty by going to the door again?" She's like, this is the biblical version of I have a headache, all right? But yet, my beloved thrust his hand through the latch opening. And so basically it's saying, oh, honey, please, I'm here for you, right? And then she says, my heart began to pound for him, right? She's like, okay, all right. He continues to call. My heart began to pound for him. So she made a decision then, okay, maybe he came home late and he's probably out working or something. And she says, I arose to open for my beloved, and my hands dripped with myrrh, right? And myrrh is like their scent. It's like their perfume. He went to the, what's the store you buy perfume at? I don't know. I mean, I used to go to like Elder Beerman, but they closed. Walmart, all right. They went to Walmart, right? Good. They went to Walmart and got some myrrh, and she drenched with myrrh. My fingers were flowing with myrrh. I am ready for him. She goes and opens the door. My fingers were flowing with myrrh. I opened for my beloved, but my beloved had left. He was gone. My heart sank at his departure. I looked for him, but did not find him. I called him, but he did not answer. So here he was. He was coming home late at night, right? He was coming home late at night. He was wet from the dew of the night. He probably wanted some loving, right? He's knocking on the door. She's like, I'm tired. I'm in bed. I'm already ready for bed. My makeup's off. I've taken my glasses, my contacts out. I don't know. All right, whatever it is they did, right? And he's like, oh, but honey, I love you, right? And she's like, oh, I love him too, right? But then she goes, she opens the door, and he's gone. He's mad at her. She's already gone. Right? So here it is. They're coming off their honeymoon, right? He's out working. He's out. I don't know exactly what he was doing, but he comes home. She's already in bed. He wants to come join her. She says, no. And then she says, but they're having their fight, right? So they're having an argument. They're having a disagreement. The good news is they resolve that. So let's take a look at the scripture to figure out how they resolve that. Let's take a look and see how their choices led and their feelings followed. They made some choices about how they were going to handle the disagreements in their relationship. So let's take a look now at chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. This is the chorus of friends, right? So these are her friends. They're like, where has your beloved gone, most beautiful of women? Right? Which way did your beloved turn that we may look for him with you? Now, I don't know her friends, but this kind of sounds like, the bridesmaid that are like, where did he go now? You had this perfect relationship. Where's he at? Right? And she says, I know where he's gone. My beloved has gone down to his garden, to the beds of spices, to browse in the gardens and to gather lilies. I am my beloved's, and my beloved is mine. He browses among the lilies. All right? So what happened was, he got mad, he left, but where did he go? He went to his garden. He was browsing amongst his lilies, amongst the spices. And you may say, well, what does that mean? Well, that's where he went to pray, and that's where he went to meditate. He was angry, and instead of reacting, he acted. All right? He was angry, and he responded by going to pray about it, to go and meditate about what was going on. Right? Instead of continuing to bang down the door, instead of waiting there and giving her what for when she came, instead of hurling insults at her, he left to go and pray about what's going on. And we have that model that Jesus gives us when we turn to 1 Peter 2, chapter 2, verse 23. When they hurled insults at him, he did not retaliate. When he suffered, he made no threats. Instead, he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. So we hear this model of Jesus. When people insulted Jesus, when they came at him with their insults, when they came at him with their threats, instead of retaliating towards them, what he did is he entrusted himself to him who judges justly. Right? He went and prayed about it. He said, the Lord will take care of me. No matter what they say about me, whatever they say to me, whatever threats they make, I am going to respond by praying. So that leads us to choice number 1. Choice number one is I will act, not react. I will act, not react. Now, what's the difference between acting and reacting? Acting means I have an intentional plan about what I'm going to do. Reacting means whatever they come at me with, I'm coming back at them. All right? Reacting means saying something like I said, you are just like your father. Right? Where we've lost sight of the goal of resolving the argument, and our goal has become, I'm going to win this. Right? I'm going to react to whatever they said. And we've all been there. Right? We've all been there when we've been in an argument, when there's been some discontent in our marriage or in our relationship, and we start throwing insults back, insult one way, insult the other. It becomes a verbal boxing match. And if you think about it, do you ever think, you think that I really thought when I said that to my lovely wife, when I said you were just like your father, do you think I thought she was going to sit back and say, you know what, that's a great insight. Thank you for bringing that up. I'm going to change right now. No, that's not what was going to happen, right? That's not the way that people respond, right? And it doesn't lead to good things. You see, when we allow our feelings to take the lead, when we allow our feelings to direct our actions, bad stuff happens. But when we make a conscious decision before the argument happens of this is how I'm going to deal with it. When we get in an argument, I'm going to act. And whatever that act may be for you, it may be taking a step away, going into another room and praying about what your next step should be, and then coming back and having the discussion. Right? When we intentionally act, when we allow our choice to act to lead, the feeling that follows is going to be much better than when we react to what they say. So choice one, I will act, not react. Let's look at the second choice that they made. And we turn to verse 4 in Song of Solomon, and then we go on to verse 9. You are as beautiful as Tirzah, my darling, as lovely as Jerusalem, as majestic as troops with banners. All right? Turn your eyes from me. They overwhelm me. Quit looking at me. I can't look at you. You're so beautiful. Remember when I said that to you last night, didn't I? Stop looking at me because your eyes are so beautiful, right? They overwhelm me. And remember when I said to you last night, your hair is like a flock of goats? That was a compliment back then, all right? Our neighbors have goats, right? Right? I don't know. Hey, that reminds me of my wife. No, it didn't happen. But this is a compliment. Your hair is like a flock of goats descending from Gilead. All right? Your teeth are like a flock of sheep coming up from the washing. Each has a twin, not one of them missing. When you're cleaning someone's teeth, do you say, oh, they look like sheep? No, I mean, she's a dental hygienist, right? So I'm just not randomly pointing at people, right? No, but that was a compliment. The temples behind your veil are like the halves of a pomegranate. All right? Now, if this was coming in the proper order, and we're going to hear this next week, these things that he said, and we continue on in verse 5, these things that he said are the same things that he said on their wedding night. This is how he seduced her, right? All right? And he goes on and he says, 60 queens there may be, and 80 concubines, and virgins beyond number. So there's a ton of women out there. But my dove, my perfect one, is unique. The only daughter of her mother, the favorite one of who bore her. The young women saw her and called her blessed. The queens and concubines praised her. These are the exact same words that he used on their wedding night. They are in a fight. They are in an argument. They are in a disagreement. And the way that he spoke to her is the exact same way that he spoke to her when they were making love for the first time. He said to her the compliments. These are the best things that he could have ever said to her. Now, probably not the words that I would have chose. I probably would not compare my wife to a sheep and a goat, right? But it worked for him. It was a compliment in their relationship. You know, to me, I think it's bad, right? All right. But for him, it was good. So, choice number 2 that they made in their relationship is I will focus on the good and not the bad. The choice that they made is when things get rough, I am going to think about what I love about my spouse, what I love about the person that I'm in a relationship with, instead of the things that make me mad. Because you see, when our choice to think about what is good leads, our feelings that follow are going to be positive. And we're told that in the New Testament as well. In Philippians 4:8, Paul tells us, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. Why does Paul tell us that? Because he knows that what we think about is going to dictate how we feel. As a psychologist, the clients and patients that I work with when I'm doing therapy, if we want to change how we feel and we want to change how we behave, we need to change how we think. So if we're in an argument, if we're in a period of discontent, if we have conflict in our relationship, the human thing to do is think about the things that we're mad about, to think about the negative characteristics, the negative traits that our partner is showing us. But what Solomon is showing us here in the Song of Solomon, the biblical model for relationships, and what Paul tells us in Philippians is no, don't think about the bad, but instead think about the good. It is hard to be really angry and to say mean things when you're thinking about the things that you're mad about, right? So instead of thinking about how angry you are because your spouse left out a pair of socks, or because you came home from work and things weren't the way that you liked them, think about the reason why you fell in love in the first place. If you have the same thoughts that you have when you first met, when the emotions were flowing, the same thoughts that you have at the peak of your relationship, if you force yourself to think those thoughts in the valleys, it raises you up out of the valley. So our choice to think about the good will lead to the feelings that we need to have during the conflict. If we get that out of whack, and if our choices follow our feelings, if our feelings and our thoughts are angry thoughts and we're focusing on the bad things are going to happen. All right? So choice number 2 that we need to have is I will focus on the good and not the bad. Now let's look at the third choice. Let's go further in the Song of Solomon here, further in chapter 6. I went down to the grove of nut trees to look at the new growth in the valley and to see if the vines had budded or the pomegranates were in bloom. Before I realized it, my desire set me among the royal chariots of my people. Come back, O Shulamite. Come back, that we may gaze on you. All right, so what we're seeing here is, if you remember back from a couple weeks ago, Pastor Ryan was talking about the seasons of a relationship, and that's a metaphor that we see in Scripture here. It's a metaphor that we see of the relationship, of how we go through the seasons, right? They were in winter, a time where the relationship seemed dead and there wasn't much growth. But he went back, and guess what? Things were blooming. Things were budding. What season does that happen in? Spring. Life had come, and he says, come back to me, my Shulamite. Why would you gaze on the Shulamite as the dance of the Mehanamaha? All right, I don't know how to pronounce that either, right? All right? Well, he's calling her my Shulamite, and there's some disagreement in the commentaries about exactly what Shulamite is, but we refer to his bride as the Shulamite woman. Well, one of the commentaries that I read says the Shulamite is the feminine version of Solomon, that they both mean the peaceful one. So he's saying, we are one and the same, right? So they were fighting, they were in this time of winter, but they got past the winter and they made it to spring. They made the active choice to make it through the winter, to make it through the time of conflict, to resolve the issue and get to the spring, get to the point where the relationship was better again. So that leads us to choice 3. And choice 3 is I will talk, I will not walk. I will talk, I will not walk. We will make it through this time of winter. Some winters are long, right? Sometimes things are really bad. Sometimes it looks like every crop has died and we're not sure it's going to make it back again. But let me promise you, it will happen, right? We look at this and say our decision needs to be to make it through and to resolve any issue that we may have and to not walk from the relationship. Now, I realize that I'm probably speaking to some people here today that have been in relationships that they've walked away from. Maybe people that have been, that have chosen the route of divorce. All right? That's in the past, all right? Jesus forgives anything that happens in the past. We're talking from here on out, right? That was one of the things that Danae and I said early in our relationship, and because we were advised about this early on in some premarital counseling and talking to our parents, that what you need to do is to take divorce off the table. You need to take the end of the relationship off the table, right? Because if that's not an option, it is something that you will tell yourself that we are going to make it through this. We are going to resolve this issue. You see, all too often, we lose sight of the goal through conflict, right? When we're in conflict, we think that our job here is to win this argument. Our job is to win this disagreement. But we need to make the decision that we're going to talk it out. We are dedicated to resolving these issues. Now, the natural order of any relationship, what happens in a human relationship, is the honeymoon phase, right? You've always heard that, the honeymoon phase, right? Well, honeymoon literally means sweet month, right? At the beginning of any relationship, the googly goos are there, right? You've never met anybody better. This is the greatest thing that's ever happened. You focus on the good. You start the relationship, and then life sets in. And you realize that maybe this person is not as perfect as you thought they were. Right? And I can remember this probably set in pretty soon for Danae. Right? Oh, boy. I don't know how soon those oh boys were. I can remember one time we were, and this may be a little too much to share from the platform, but I'm going to share it anyway because it's a perfect example of disillusionment. So sorry to those of you watching online. All right? But I can remember on our honeymoon, we're sitting in a hotel in Siesta Key Beach. That's where we were, right? Right? All right. And we had this hotel room with the wall of windows. They had upgraded us because they saw it was our honeymoon and wanted it to be a great time for us. And Danae's like walking through the room, and she turns the door, and the door to the bathroom's open, and I'm sitting there going. She's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Going to the bathroom." I was like, "We're married now. We share everything, right?" She's like, "Shut the door." All right, I guess we don't share everything in this relationship. Right? So she realized that maybe I'm not that perfect spouse that she thought I was, right? So that's the one time in 21 years I haven't lived up to expectations, maybe. I don't know, right? But what does our society tell us? Our society tells us that our happiness is dependent on the other person in our life. And if they're not living up to the expectations that we have for them, phooey on them. I'm looking forward somewhere else, right? Anybody remember the website Ashley Madison that made the news a few years ago? Right? Ashley Madison is a website that caters particularly towards married men that are looking for someone else. All right? And they say on their website, I didn't go to the website to see this today, right? I Googled it because I knew about it, right? It says on their website, we guarantee that you will successfully find what you're looking for or we'll give you your money back. Right? So it basically said, okay, you didn't find what you were looking for, but you can come here and you can find what you're looking for. Well, if you remember, what happened is someone hacked into the Ashley Madison user database, and they found all of the people that had logged on and set up accounts. Friends, I'd like to tell you that it was the people that you would expect, the people that, yeah, sure, they're going to have an affair. But the number of pastors and people in ministry that were found on that site was amazing. And in fact, there were pastors that committed suicide following this being there. They had fell into this worldly trap of, if things aren't going well, find the next person. Move on to the next person, right? Friends, let me tell you, when you're in a relationship, one of the choices that we need to make in order to make it work is no matter how bad things get, I will talk, I will not walk. we will work through it. So we've looked today at the three choices that we need to make. And if we put these things first, right? If I will act and not react. I will focus on the good and not the bad. We will talk and not walk. If we allow these three choices, the choices that Solomon and his bride made in their relationship, it can improve our relationship. It can help us to overcome the discontent and the conflict that's a natural part of any relationship. Now, we can't do this without God's love. And as the band comes up, we need to know that we cannot do this without God's love, right? We need to pray, God, help me to make it through any conflict that we have. Make God a part of your relationship. You may be here this morning, you may be an engaged couple that are planning your lives together and you're making decisions. Start early. Right? Make that decision together that these are the three choices that we're going to make in our relationship. These are the three ways that we're going, when conflict comes, this is how we're going to handle it. You may be here this morning and you're in the winter season. You're in the midst of great conflict. Something's going on or a variety of things and you guys find yourselves arguing frequently. Make the decision today that you're going to start making these three choices, that you're going to allow your choices to lead and your feelings to follow. Maybe it's spending time together in the Word. Maybe it's praying together. Maybe it's finding another Christian couple to talk about these things with. But make these three decisions that we're going to make it through the winter and we're going to find springtime. Maybe you're here this morning, whether you're in a relationship or you're not in a relationship at all, and you're saying, he's talking about these things today that are impossible, but he's highlighted the fact that they can be possible if I have God's love in my life. Well, there may be no better day than today to start that relationship with God and to invite Jesus in your heart. So if everybody would bow their heads. I have two questions for you this morning. And with every head bowed and every eye closed, is there anybody here today that's in a relationship that may not be going the way that you thought it was going to go when you started it? And you say, we're making this commitment today that we're going to make it work. And I don't need to know all your business, but maybe raise your hand as a commitment before God that we're going to make this work, and I can pray for you. Is anybody here today that's in that situation? Thank you. Thank you. Friends, if you don't have a relationship with Jesus, if he's not in your life, you're missing out on the greatest thing that can happen to you. Is there anyone here today that would like to invite Jesus into your heart? And if that's where you're at today, please pray this prayer with me. Dear Heavenly Father, I realize that I can only love others the way that I should if I have your love in my heart. Lord, I know that I've done some things that I probably shouldn't have done, and I'm sorry for those things, but I ask you into my heart today. I want to begin a relationship with you today. Please come into my heart and forgive me of my sins and help me to love others as you have loved me. Is there anybody here that's praying that prayer today for the first time? Thank you. Thank you. Dave, let's worship.